Power doesn't always look like resistance. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to step back.
That's the essence of Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Not to give up, not to lose, but to disarm and reposition.
Most people confuse surrender with weakness, but in strategy, surrender can be leverage. When you're losing, truly losing, fighting harder just drains you. But surrender? That buys you time.
Time to adapt, time to observe, time to let your opponent overextend. Because once they think they've won, they relax. And relaxed opponents make mistakes.
This law isn't about defeat. It's about shifting your power from direct confrontation to indirect control. Let them feel victorious while you regroup under the radar.
And it requires one thing most people struggle with: emotional control. Your pride wants to fight, to prove itself, to scream, "I'm not weak." But your strategy, it whispers, "Let it go for now."
That delay is everything, because the war isn't decided in one battle. You can lose 10 times and still win the game, if you know when to retreat and why.
Think of martial arts. The most skilled fighters don't resist every push. They redirect, they absorb, they use the opponent's force against them. That's exactly what surrender can be, a redirection of energy.
And in the world of power, surrender often makes your opponent reveal more. They start to believe their own myth. They get arrogant, and arrogance opens them up to exposure.
Greene says it clearly. Surrender doesn't mean submission. It's a temporary shift in posture, not in purpose. You still hold the long-term goal. You're just taking a different route to get there.
But it feels unnatural, especially if you're strong, competent, ambitious. Stepping back feels like betrayal. But sometimes the best strategy is to let yourself be underestimated. Again.
Because when they think you're done, you disappear from their radar, and that invisibility gives you freedom. Freedom to move, to plan, to strike when you choose, not when you're forced.
What makes this law powerful is that it invites you to choose your losses. Not every hill is worth dying on. Not every battle deserves your energy.
And in high-stakes environments, business, politics, relationships, that restraint can redefine the power dynamic, because most people can't back down without feeling humiliated.
But if you surrender with intention, you turn that apparent defeat into something else, a strategic pause, a chance to reframe the situation on your terms.
We've both seen this. Someone loses a promotion, gets overlooked, gets dismissed in a meeting, and instead of lashing out, they lean back, they nod, they say, "Okay." And in that silence, they start working their next move.
And that silence unnerves people because most expect retaliation. The moment it doesn't come, it creates tension. Why didn't they react? What are they planning?
That's the seed of influence, because now you're no longer just a player, you're a wild card, unpredictable, not reactive, and that makes people watch you differently.
And let's be honest, surrender can be a mirror. It shows people who they are. If they press harder after you yield, you see their cruelty. If they become arrogant, you see their blind spots.
It's a spotlight. It reveals character. And sometimes letting someone win is the only way to see what they really wanted in the first place.
But here's the twist. Surrender only works if your sense of self isn't tied to the moment, if your confidence comes from internal control, not from external validation.
That's where most people crack. They mistake short-term discomfort for long-term loss. But in the power game, surrender is rarely final. It's a feint, a mask, a move that sets up the next play.
So instead of pushing every time you're pushed, ask, what happens if I step back right now? What does this allow me to see that I couldn't see while fighting?
Sometimes stepping back gives you the aerial view. You stop being stuck in reaction and start seeing the board. That shift from emotion to elevation, that's where the power starts to return. Let's get into something deeper. How surrender, when done well, can actually provoke your opponent to overstep, to move too far, too fast, and ultimately collapse.
That's the beautiful trap. You don't resist, you don't fight back, you agree. You let them feel they've won, and in that false security, they lower their guard, or worse, start exposing themselves.
Because when people think there's no more resistance, they stop being strategic. They start being arrogant. That's when they get sloppy, and that's when you reposition.
Robert Greene calls this a tactic of retreat. It's not weakness, it's repositioning in motion. You pull back not to escape, but to re-enter from a stronger angle later.
We've seen this in politics, right? A leader steps down voluntarily. Everyone thinks they're done, but 2 years later, they come back with more support, less enemies, and deeper insight.
And even in personal dynamics, romantic or professional, when you stop chasing, when you stop defending yourself, you shift the emotional balance. You stop feeding their narrative.
They expect drama, they expect resistance, but you give them quiet. You give them detachment, and that silence is disarming. It forces them to deal with themselves.
It's emotional Aikido. You let their momentum carry them while you stay grounded. No energy wasted, no ego bruised. You just pivot.
And the power in that, you start choosing your next move from a place of clarity, not chaos. You're not scrambling to protect yourself. You're building your next angle in silence.
And here's something subtle. Sometimes surrender actually creates empathy. When you yield, you show vulnerability, and that vulnerability, when controlled, can make the other side soften.
Which is wild, because surrender might not just be tactical, it might be persuasive. You move from opponent to human, from threat to mirror, and that opens space for influence.
But again, it only works if your sense of timing is sharp, if you know when to pause, when to watch, and when to re-enter with intention. Otherwise, you're just disappearing.
Exactly. Surrender without strategy is submission, but surrender with strategy is transformation. You're not giving up, you're shifting gears.
Let's take this into real-world moments. The meeting where you're outnumbered, the argument you're not going to win, the deal that's clearly leaning against you. Most people panic, get defensive, or force their point.
But the high-level move, you don't push harder, you absorb. You say, "You're right." You let them believe they've convinced you, and in that moment, they stop trying. They think it's over.
But it's not. You've just taken yourself off their radar. You've moved out of the line of fire. And that space, that's where you start rebuilding without resistance.
That's the real secret of this law. Surrender is a strategy for buying time, and time is one of the most valuable currencies in power. Time to regroup, reposition, redirect attention.
And in negotiation, it's even more powerful. You yield on one point, you let them win, and while they're celebrating, you move the real conversation to a quieter space, where the real terms can be shaped.
Most amateur negotiators fight every inch. They try to win every clause. But masters, they lose on purpose, just enough to lower defenses. Then they win the long game.
And the psychology behind it is simple. People trust you more when they believe you've been defeated. You become non-threatening. They open up, and suddenly you're influencing from the inside.
It's the same with emotional manipulation. The moment you stop pushing back, the aggressor loses momentum. Their identity was built on your resistance. You remove that, and they're left with just their own reflection.
That's why this law is more than tactical. It's philosophical. It requires you to detach from the need to be right, to be strong, to be seen as winning in the moment.
Because real power doesn't live in the spotlight. It grows in the shadows, in the quiet moves no one sees, in the choices made when everyone else is distracted by their own ego.
And if you can master the pause, the controlled withdrawal, you'll start to notice something. People come to you. They chase your attention. They wonder what you're planning.
And that curiosity, that uncertainty, that's leverage. You went from losing to leading without even raising your voice.
History is full of examples where surrender wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The greatest power players knew when to bow and when to rise again.
One of the clearest examples, Mao Zedong. During the Chinese Civil War, he ordered the Red Army to retreat, what became known as the Long March. It looked like surrender, defeat, collapse.
But that retreat allowed him to preserve his forces, to re-strategize, to survive. And just a few years later, he came back stronger and seized total control of China.
That's the pattern. Temporary defeat, strategic patience, followed by total repositioning. Most people fear short-term losses because they don't trust their ability to rebuild.
But if you see every loss as data, as opportunity, you stop fearing retreat. You start using it as a phase, not an ending.
And this applies even in soft power. Think of Gandhi. His resistance to British rule wasn't armed. It was surrender, non-violence, but it exposed the brutality of the empire. That surrender became the moral weapon.
And moral weapons are hard to fight because the aggressor looks like the villain, and the one surrendering starts to control public perception. That's a whole different layer of power.
Psychologically, people expect conflict. They prepare for a fight. But when you don't give them one, you confuse them. You hold up a mirror instead of a shield.
And most people don't know how to fight a mirror. When you don't resist, they're left to confront their own motives, their own rage, their own imbalance. That's power without force.
In corporate culture, the smartest executives sometimes take the fall on purpose. They absorb blame, step down quietly, and 6 months later, they're back in a better position, with more control.
Because they used surrender to protect the brand, to protect their long-term assets, to avoid a public war they knew wasn't winnable. That's long-range thinking. No ego, just strategy.
So, here's the rule. If your position is weak and you can't win directly, don't fight. Retreat. Observe. Let the opponent burn resources. Let them believe they've won. And then, shift.
Because the one who controls the tempo, even in silence, often controls the outcome, and silence is a weapon most people never learn to use. So when we talk about surrender, we're not talking about weakness, we're talking about strategy disguised as humility.
It's the choice to step out of the spotlight, to give up control on the surface so you can regain it underneath.
Because in the power game, it's never just about who's loudest or strongest. It's about who can last, who can adapt, who knows when to strike and when to disappear.
And the person who can disappear without losing themselves is dangerous, because you can't trap someone who has nothing to prove in the moment.
It takes maturity. You have to kill your need to be right, to be seen, to get the last word. That's the cost of long-term influence, giving up short-term satisfaction.
It's a slow weapon, a quiet one, but it cuts deep. Because when they think you're gone, when they stop watching, that's when you move.
You pivot, rebuild, gather allies, wait for the moment when their guard is down, and then you return, not as the same player, but as someone they didn't prepare for.
And the shift isn't loud, it's precise, measured. I've seen people go from overlooked to irreplaceable because they knew when to yield and how to transform during that space.
So if you're in a position right now where you feel like you're losing, maybe you are, but that doesn't mean it's over. It might just mean it's time to step back and watch.
Ask yourself, what am I fighting for right now that's actually costing me more than it's giving? And what would happen if I let go, just for a while?
Because letting go isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the setup for a return that no one sees coming.
Next week, we explore another layer of subtle dominance. Law 23, concentrate your forces, where you stop scattering energy and start focusing it like a weapon.
But until then, don't be afraid to step back. Power isn't always about the next move. Sometimes it's about waiting while everyone else wears themselves out.
Because control isn't what you hold, it's what you can walk away from.